Well, welcome on into another edition of the Campaign Catch-Up. I'm John Stolnis, joined by CBN News Chief Political Analyst David Brody, who is coming to us from the mothership in Virginia Beach, CBN News headquarters, as we get ready for our live election coverage on Tuesday night. I don't know if everybody's heard, but Donald Trump and Kamala Harris are going to be holding a little election on Tuesday night to see who will be in the Oval Office for the next 4 years. I've read something about it. I may have seen a commercial or two on TV, David. As we get going here, how are things going there in Virginia Beach? We're getting ready for this live coverage tomorrow night. It should be a really interesting evening.
No doubt about it. You're right. I am down here in Virginia Beach at the mothership, if you will. I think I've seen Captain James T. Kirk at the helm. I'm not quite sure who that would be exactly. And I'm also dating myself by saying James T. Kirk. Well, if I said William Shatner, I'd be dating myself for sure. Look, you guys know the deal, but just to inform everybody, 8 p.m. Tuesday night, we will be on all platforms on CBN News. Check us out everywhere, right? I mean, we got the YouTube. We got, did I just say the YouTube? Boy, I am.
The YouTube.
Yeah, the YouTube. The app, cbnnews.com. I don't know, as they like to say, check your local listings, but I guess, or check your streaming listings at this point. But we'll also be on television too. So go to cbnnews.com and get it all. But 8 p.m., there it is. Oh, look. Oh, that's a nice shot of us, isn't it? 8 p.m. to midnight, John Jessup, myself, and I'm 9 feet tall, by the way, behind them. I've grown since then, and I'll be part of the coverage too. But look, we're geeking out. I'll be into each one of those counties, and not just for geeking out's sake, but to really see the trends of what we're going to expect as it relates to certain demographics that must show up for Trump, certain ones that have to show up for Kamala Harris, for either one of them to get to 270, be the next president of the United States. So, John, that's what we'll be watching.
Well, let's talk a little bit about what we've got going on here today on Monday, the day before the campaign. And I was wondering, I wanted to get your thoughts on whether or not we can read into how the candidates, how the campaigns feel about where they are in these certain battleground states based off of where they are today. Kamala Harris is going to be in Pennsylvania all day. She's doing 4 rallies, 2 in the eastern part of the state, and then she's going to go out to the Pittsburgh area. You've got Donald Trump campaigning in North Carolina, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. So he's hitting 3 battleground states the day before the election. Tim Walz is campaigning in Wisconsin and Michigan, and Senator Vance is campaigning in 4 states today. He's the Iron Man today, hitting 4 of the 7 battleground states: Wisconsin, Michigan, Georgia, and Pennsylvania. Do those stops, does that itinerary, does that tell you anything about where the different candidates and where the different campaigns, where they feel that they are in these battleground states?
That's a great question, John. And look, you've mentioned a lot of candidates, or, I said candidates, a lot, all the VPs and the POTUS candidates and a lot of states. But let me just narrow down it to one candidate and one state: Kamala Harris, Pennsylvania. That's where she's at. Those are her stops. That should tell us everything we need to know about the fact that Kamala Harris's campaign understands that if they win Pennsylvania, they believe they're going to win this election because they think, they hope and pray that they'll win Wisconsin and Michigan, but they have to have Pennsylvania. And so I think that is pretty much what we can read into all of that, because Kamala Harris' path to 270 is very straightforward. Win the 3 blue wall states, win those 3 Rust Belt states, and that gets you to 270. And when I say get you to 270, it barely gets you there, but you get there at 270 if she wins all 3 blue wall states. The Sun Belt states will not matter. Oh, by the way, a quick little asterisk: as long as she wins Nebraska too. Okay, if for some reason that goes south on her, she's up about 8 to 10 points for that one electoral vote in Nebraska too. She should win it. But if for some reason she doesn't, well, guess what, John? We could have the old 269 to 269, and at that point, I'm literally checking myself into election rehab at that point. But look, the bottom line is that is her path. So that's why Pennsylvania is the one state that they're most concerned about. And I think you see that by the fact that she's in that state today multiple times.
Yeah, I think if this thing finishes up 269 to 269, the entire country is going to join you in the white padded room, David. There's no doubt about that. I wanted to get your thoughts on this poll that came out over the weekend, which really rattled and shook up the campaigns and certainly a lot of the analysts who've been watching these campaigns. It's an Ann Seltzer poll. She's a pollster based out of Iowa. She's been doing it for a really long time, widely respected pollster, and oftentimes kind of goes against the grain. Some of her polls don't necessarily line up with everything else that we've seen out there. And looking at Iowa, this is not a state that is a battleground state. Just about every poll out there believes that Donald Trump is going to win Iowa and probably win it pretty comfortably. She had a poll out this weekend that shocked everyone by showing Kamala Harris up 3 points in Iowa. Now, whether or not she actually wins Iowa or not, I wonder if you saw the poll, what you think about the poll, and whether there's anything inside that poll that that you found particularly interesting, either for Kamala Harris or for Donald Trump.
Well, let me do the caveat disclaimer to say, obviously, this just in, I'm not a pollster. So these people know it a whole lot better than me, but I do study polls, not necessarily for a living, but I pay close attention to them. A couple things stood out to me. Well, first of all, she's been pretty good on many of these polls in the past. However, she did get Trump wrong in 2016. She thought that Trump would win Iowa. In 2016, it was Ted Cruz in the primary, that is, that won Iowa. So there is that. But beyond all of that, she doesn't weight the polls, which is interesting. She doesn't do any methodology. She doesn't weight them. She just calls and just kind of does it more organic. In a way, you can say that's a good thing. But take that for what it is. I would just say this, that if you look at the numbers, 47 for Kamala Harris, 44 for Donald Trump, what does that add up to? 91. That leaves 9%. Well, what is that 9%? Well, if you look inside that number, 2% of that is the Jill Stein, Cornel West vote. And then that leaves about 7% of people that say they're not quite sure who they're going to vote for. So if that starts to tilt towards Trump, then all of a sudden, that poll changes. So we just don't know, not to mention there's a margin of error in this as well. So look, it's really hard to say. And here's why, because the last time I checked, she's surveying likely voters, just like all these polls are. Some of them do register, but most of them are doing likely voters. Hey, here's a novel thought. On Wednesday morning, those likely voters will be certain voters. So we will know for sure. Look, John, the bottom line is it's all going to depend on turnout. And that's why anybody telling you they know what's going to happen would have to go into their, crystal ball. I hate to use the word crystal ball with CBN because we don't believe in that type of stuff here. But you know what I'm trying to say, euphemistically, go into their crystal ball and be able to predict turnout. And we just don't know. And that kind of gets us into certain demographics, and we can talk more about that. But in terms of the Iowa poll, it's definitely interesting. I think it's got to be a bit of a concern. But having said that, we just don't know. We don't.
I want to get your thoughts on how each of these candidates also have been campaigning here over the last few days. We've seen Kamala Harris continuing to deliver campaign stump speeches in the battleground states. On Sunday, she delivered a speech at a rally where she didn't mention Donald Trump's name once. It's really the first time she's gotten away from really hammering on the fascist commentary, the threat to democracy commentary, and she appeared on Saturday Night Live over the weekend as well. And you've had Donald Trump at different rallies. He's been doing 2, 3, 4 a day. Democrats, the left, and some critics have been painting them as kind of all over the place, not really delivering a strong closing argument. The characterization of the rallies is that they've kind of been rambling and that he appears tired. So I wanted to get your thoughts as to whether or not you agreed with that assessment or not, and how you think both of these candidates are finishing up here over the last few days.
Yeah, shockingly, I kind of agree a bit with the assessment coming from some of those folks in the media, but forget the media, them aside. Look, he's 78. He's got great stamina, but when you do rally after rally after rally, he's doing a whole lot more rallies than she is. He's doing 4 events a day. She's doing 2 typically. Now that changes from day to day sometimes, but overall, he's doing a whole lot more events than she is, and she's 60 and he's 78. So, at some point, it's going to take a toll on anybody, let alone a 78-year-old. So there's that. But yeah, listen, to say Trump has been a bit off message is not going to shock anybody. This is who Trump is. It is, as he likes to call it, the weave. And, people can have fun with that if they want. But that's who he is. And so I guess we should not expect him to be talking about the economy and immigration, and that's pretty much it. He's just not that disciplined. And honestly, he doesn't want to be that disciplined. As a matter of fact, he's told advisors that discipline is boring, and that it's just not where it's at. And to a degree, he may be right. And what I mean by that is that, Trump is a very different politician, to say the least. And people understand that, for him to all of a sudden kind of be on point in his closing message and deliver an airtight prompter speech, no one's expecting that from Trump. He's never done it. So he's still not doing it. And so with that, you get him going off message. But look, it worked for him in 2016. We'll see if it works for him in 2024. As for Kamala Harris, yeah, I mean, I think it's a good sign for her that she's not talking about Trump in these last couple days. I think you have to not talk about him at that point. You have to go for the optimistic vision. I think you get a sense that they got to make sure that there's a hopeful vision rather than a doom and gloom vision. That's not the way to win a campaign.
So, David, as we're kind of finishing up this campaign here, and it's been a long and arduous process, where it's at crunch time right now. On Tuesday, when people are heading to the polls, and we're watching the tally roll in on Tuesday night, what needs to happen in order for Donald Trump to win another term? How does this all shake out for this?
Yeah, John, I think I heard your audio there at the end. Are you still there with me, John?
Oh, yes. Sorry. I didn't realize I dropped out. I was asking you, what does Donald Trump need to have happen on Tuesday in order to win?
Sure. So there's so much to talk about, but let's just narrow it down to say this. He needs to make sure that he does very well with the male vote. He was +8 in 2020. He needs to do better than that, because he's going to lose women most likely by a lot more than he lost them in 2020. So let me give you the bottom line. If Donald Trump can do better with men than Kamala Harris does among women, he's probably going to win the election. He's probably going to win. That's kind of like the 30,000-foot overview. So the two numbers to keep in mind on Tuesday night is, from an exit poll standpoint, we'll start to read some tea leaves. You look at what did Trump do among men nationally in exit polls? If that is above 8, that's good for him. But then you look at the number that Kamala Harris does among women, and then you see which number is bigger, and you see which one, in essence, is going to help him or hurt him. So that's part of it. But here's the thing: he's going to need, and this is the big gamble. This is the challenge. All those podcasts we saw him do, all that other stuff, that was all about getting young men out to vote for him. Sounds like a great strategy until they don't show up at the polls. They are low propensity voters. So we don't know if all of those young men, 18 to 29, that Gen Z group, if you will, especially 18 to 24 within that subset, actually show up. So he's going to need young men to get out and vote for him to drive up the male number. That's a big deal. Now, the good news for Kamala Harris is that she's relying on female voters, specifically college-educated female voters, specifically white women college-educated female voters, who are all very reliable. So she's got a base that she's hoping will get out, and she has reason to believe that they will. Donald Trump has a base that he needs to get out, and it's a question mark if they will. And so that's an advantage for Kamala Harris, clearly. But a couple other things on the Donald Trump front. He's got to do better. He'll have to do better with Black voters and Hispanic voters. That is expected. I can't imagine a scenario where he does the same or worse. I think those numbers will be up, and that becomes a problem for Kamala Harris. So I don't know. Maybe you're going to ask me a question about Kamala Harris, but I'll just simply say this, that because they kind of weave together. So basically, here's the deal. Overall, what we're seeing, John, what we're going to probably see Tuesday night most likely is a bit of a shift in the way both Republican and Democrat parties have cobbled votes together. So in other words, typically the Obama coalition was blacks, Hispanics, and a decent amount of folks in the blue collar votes. But that's not the way it's going to be now. Now it's going to be white college educated voters that are going to have to propel Kamala Harris. And Donald Trump's going to do better with Black and Hispanic voters. So everything's mixed up here. And that is what we're going to have to wait and find out. So I guess what I'm trying to say in a nutshell is that when it comes to Black and Hispanic voters, will Donald Trump's increase among those two subset groups be larger than Kamala Harris, what she's doing among college-educated voters? And we wait and see. We just don't know the math at this point.
Right. And so you answered the second part of that question that I was going to ask, what she needs to do to win. I wonder, some of the conversation we've seen from, again, the Kamala Harris folks is the Madison Square Garden comments, even though it wasn't Donald Trump who made them, but the comedian that they had on who made the comments about Puerto Rico, that might be hurting him among the Puerto Rican community, especially in Pennsylvania. Again, we guys have to wait and see. Go ahead, please.
Well, yeah, no, I think you're right. We're going to have to wait and see. And it kind of gets us into the geek mode here, into counties.
Yes.
And you know Philadelphia very well, but I'm definitely looking into that Philadelphia suburb area. 60% of the vote from Pennsylvania comes from the Philly suburbs. We're talking about, well, I don't need to tell you this, Chester County, Delaware County, Montgomery County, and Bucks County. And those four, and of course you have Philadelphia County, which will be important to get out the predominantly a Black vote for Kamala Harris. But beyond all of that, out of all those counties, because they're all going to go for Kamala, except maybe, possibly Bucks County, it is purple. At least it's not deep blue. It used to be back in the day a little bit more red. You tell me, John, but it used to be more red. Then it became more Democrat, and now it's kind of settling on a purplish haze. It went +4 for Biden. And the reason I'm looking at Bucks County in particular, because that's going to give you a sense of that suburban vote that Kamala Harris needs. She needs to do better than Biden's +4 in Bucks County. That's a number I'm watching. Biden did +4 over Trump in 2020. If her number, first of all, if Trump is winning Bucks County, that's a problem for Kamala Harris. But if Kamala Harris is doing better than +4 in Bucks County, obviously that's good for her. So it's these type of things that I'm looking at. And, you go into Wayne County in Michigan. That is a place where you've got the Black vote in that Detroit area, along with Dearborn, Michigan. So you got a kind of a twofer there. How are the Arab Americans going to vote in Dearborn? That they're within Wayne County, and the Black vote, 38% of the vote in Wayne County in that Detroit area is Black. So, that's a county I'm going to be looking for. And then you've got Wake County in North Carolina, where that Research Triangle area around Raleigh, North Carolina. That's going to be crucial because that's a very big time college educated crowd. And so Kamala Harris will do very well there. Biden won by +26 in Wake County. But guess what? +26, if you're going to lose Black and Hispanic votes to Trump, you better be north of +26 in Wake County. It's that type of stuff that I'm going to be number crunching on election night.
Well, election night is almost here. We have been doing this, been involved in this election process for the last 2 years. We've been doing this campaign catch-up show for the last few months as we've been counting down, getting closer to this day. And it is Washington, D.C. Christmas, everyone. The election is here. And we, of course, will be covering it 8 p.m. Eastern time to midnight on the CBN News network of apps and shows and everything else. Of course, you can find everything we're doing on YouTube. We'll have a couple of streams up on YouTube, but of course, John Jessup, Jenna Browder, David Brody, and the rest of the CBN News team will be headquartering things in Virginia Beach as they take us through the evening. And we'll see what we get by the time we wrap up on midnight. I think we're all expecting a very long election night into the following day, but we'll see how it goes. David, thank you so much for joining us here on Campaign Catch-Up. We'll talk to you next time.
Thank you, John. Appreciate it. I'm stocking up, by the way, on my 2024 or 202. I call them the 2024 EMs. That's my election medication. Thank you.
If you can share that, that'd be great.
All right. Thanks, John.